Well, dear awakening souls, last week's podcast on the disruption of the solar flares and the solar activities that we had 2 weekends ago didn't come out, and a lot of things have happened in my world, including the technological world. My technology failed me, so I had to delay the publishing of last week's podcast, and something happened to my recording device. So we'll talk about last week, which is actually 2 weeks ago, but it doesn't matter. The content is more important. So thank you for sticking with it, and hopefully you will enjoy. So without further ado, I'll bring you the Conscious Cruising Podcast. Light up your fire. Dear awakening souls out there, today is the here and now, and I've been thinking about a lot of things lately. So many things have happened in the world, especially my own, and I bet a lot happened in your world too. But wait, before I go any further, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Roxana FIAMMA. I'm your spiritual guide, hero's journey and transformation coach, and this is the Conscious Cruising Podcast. This podcast aims at connecting and unifying like-minded people. If these reflections resonate with you, please consider liking and sharing the video, and even better, subscribe to the channel. You'll be helping this to grow into a community of awakened individuals, all living with the same goal in mind: freedom and personal sovereignty. So, in honor of what happened at the weekend, I want to invite you to connect with the beauty of the Aurora Borealis, and I'd like to give you a few minutes to just relax and enjoy these beautiful images of the Aurora Borealis with this lovely music. So enjoy. will put the link of this footage, because there's 3 hours of it, and it's really beautiful to play now and again, just to be put in the background, rather than having a TV that just with a chatterbox might hypnotize you, unconsciously put in information because you've got the television on in the background. So it's a lot better to have this in the background. So there's been a pink Aurora Borealis all around the world in places that they've never been seen before, or that's the idea of the moment. And this has been happening this past week. Intense solar activity through the week, and particularly at the weekend, when we were bombarded by solar flares like never before in our entire known history of humankind. This means that the immense solar activity that we've been receiving is equal to a lot of information from the light of the sun on the energetic level. So in a way, to use the language of technology as an analogy, it's as if our bodies, our operating systems, are being upgraded. Information that will expand our capacity to compute and intercept the nature of reality on a highly sophisticated level. But when these downloads happen, it is a blow on our nervous system. You suddenly start feeling what my mother used to call growing pains when I was a teenager. At the very least, you will feel really tired and may have tinnitus or headaches and some other discomfort, according to your personal weakness. What I recommend is be patient, slow down, drink plenty of water, but with a bit of salt in it, because plain water doesn't really do anything. Salt water, on the other hand, is a great conductor of electricity, and at these times you do want to optimize your body so that information travels more efficiently, because your physical system is charged and strong. The same when you are upgrading the operating system of your computer. You need to have a strong signal and make sure that the computer is plugged into the socket on the mains, and that you have a full strong internet signal. The other things that this week had me thoughtful is the nature of human relationships and the dynamics of some of the relationships that I witness in the past and in the present in my life. And that led me to research about the nature of relationships and about the power of being consciously transactional in relationships. Like today, transactions in business is seen in society to be expected. I mean, it's obvious that good business is based off of good intentions, is based off of good transactions. But when we hear the idea of transactions in other relationships, like private relationship, we just go, no, this is bad and this is wrong. And when we perceive that a transaction is an element of that relationship, we feel that there's no love or no mutual caring present in that relationship, in that bond. We assume that this relationship is purely self-centered because we have transactional elements. Either one person is using the other, or both using each other at the same time. That would be the mentality. The truth is that every single relationship on earth is transactional, and it doesn't matter whether
is a business relationship or a relative, or a relationship that you have with your government, or between people and animals, or romantic relationship, your children, even the vegetable world, there's a transaction. It doesn't matter. Because transaction is a word that so many people have such negative association with, we're going to have to re-examine this concept of transaction, because it does not serve us. At its essence, a transaction is nothing more than an energy exchange. It means each person receives something and each person provides something. What makes a transaction a good one is if each person gets something that is valued. And value, especially with regards to what we value most, is based on what that person needs and wants. A person has to need and want something to truly value it. Keep in mind that you may be able to see the value in something without valuing it yourself. For example, let's say that you're in a time of scarcity, like you're in a war zone or something like that. You may be able to see the value in art, but at that particular moment you need food, you need safety. So you can't value your transaction being based off of art, even if you see the value in art. At that moment it's a bad transaction. So everything is relative. To truly value something, you need to perceive yourself to need and want it. Every relationship that you enter into, it's because you perceive that that relationship meets some need or fulfills some desire, or many. For example, in your friendship, you may be giving the other person the feeling of being free and natural, and they give you the sense of security that you've always lacked. Or with your life partner, they give you a sense of being needed and wanted and valued, and you give them the support they need to accomplish their goals. They get the help they need, and you get a sense of your own goodness. And that feel-good feeling of doing something that's right to do, that's value, that's fulfillment. With a particular family member as well, you give them the experience of availability and understanding, and they'll give you the same. This is the reason that relationships are so dynamic and they change over time. Because needs and wants change over time, like values, they change over time. Because we are dynamic, life is dynamic, and we are free to change our mind. When one or both of you begins to perceive that you're no longer getting your needs met or receiving anything of value in that relationship, or worse, if you perceive that the other person is acting as a direct antagonist to those wants and needs, satisfaction level dips in a relationship. And what happens? Well, you will gravitate towards other relationships. It's natural. This even includes parents deciding to have children. And this is why, as an aside, this is why parents who didn't want a child in the first place end up being so resentful toward that child or toward parenting in general. And it's sad. I'd like you to keep in mind that many transactions can be taking place within one relationship. So it's not always as simple as what I've just shared as the examples, right? The thing is, if it were as simple as one main exchange, and in that relationship that exchange wasn't taking place anymore, it would be a whole lot easier to decide to break up. There's nothing inherently wrong with there being a transactional element in relationships. You need to embrace the idea of conscious transactions. Every relationship is transactional, and there's nothing wrong with that. The thing is, for most people, this transactional element of the relationship is taking place at a subconscious level. It's taking place in a very instinctual way, not a conscious way at all. Or if a person is aware of the transactional element, most likely that's been denied or even hidden because of the inherent shame that a person feels when they feel like this is a part of their relationship. They hide or deny the transactional element of the relationship in the attempt to avoid negative consequences like guilt and shame. And this is very unconscious. And this is really scary because, to be honest, when we're not conscious of the transactions taking place, or when we're full on denying them or hiding them, it sets up a very dangerous and scary dynamic. Now, it's pretty easy to understand why that would be so dangerous. When you think about business, we would call that a shady business deal, right? But it's just as dangerous in any other relationship. When a transaction in a relationship is not a conscious one, things can go terribly, terribly wrong. So you can't understand what goes wrong if transaction is not actually conscious in a relationship and is hidden and denied. So I'm going to give you some examples on the negative points of being unconscious in our transactional nature. If you have no idea of what you can actually provide and what you actually need and want in a relationship, you have literally no chance of getting into a relationship that's actually compatible to you and that feels good. This can be compared to a businessman not knowing what he has to offer another company and not knowing what he wants to get from another company. How can he ever hope to find the right company to do business with? A company that is in need of what he has to offer and who has what he needs. It's a recipe for dissatisfaction in relationships and also for an endless process of entering into a relationship feeling like it's the right one, only to find out it's wrong over and over and over again. Another negative aspect is that we end up getting our needs met the way we always get our needs met when we can't go directly for it, by becoming manipulative. Not being consciously transactional opens the door for us to enter into relationships in manipulative ways and to get things out of relationships or the other people we're in a relationship with in a manipulative way. Essentially, our entire relationship becomes manipulative by nature. The third point that goes against not being consciously transactional is that it's a recipe for both parties in a relationship to feel completely hurt and completely duped, because there's no option if transaction is not conscious, except for us to assume. We assume without ever really talking about it. We assume that the other person is agreeing to meet the want or need that we entered into the relationship with. But that doesn't mean that they can or would agree to providing that for us. It also means that the best you can do is to assume why the other person is in a relationship with you. And let's just be honest, we can be way off base about this assumption because we can't be in their heads. We can project too much on that assumption. Essentially, we can't find the right energy exchange, and therefore there's no flow. Number 4, that goes against not being consciously transactional, is that we end up completely shocked, completely hurt, and completely confused when somebody who we thought that we loved so much and who loved us so much suddenly is able or wants to end the relationship and reconfigure it. We don't actually know those wants and needs that caused the other person to get into the relationship with us in the first place, unless we're consciously transactional. We don't understand how something could be so powerful as to make it so that they could do this to us. We also have absolutely no shot at figuring out what those needs are in the other person so that we can create security in the relationship. And then we don't end up surprised why somebody can reconfigure the relationship or leave. And let's be honest, when this type of dynamic happens, we start to take it as a comment about our personal value and worth, which is in itself not really a bad thing because it triggers in us the desire to be more introspective about ourselves. But nonetheless, it's more painful. And 5, we end up so conflicted and so in pain when no matter how much love there is, or there might be, that we feel towards someone, or how much we care about them, we are at the same time so dissatisfied in the relationship that we are actually considering that we may need to end it, or we may need to reconfigure the relationship. We are unable to explain to ourselves or to them why loving them and caring about them just wasn't enough. And 6, we shortcut our ability to find happiness in life. Because when we ask the question, what is life? Life is essentially relationships. It's the quality of your relationships that you have with all things in existence that amount to quality of life. And there is no way to have a good relationship without the transactional element of a relationship being a positive one. To understand this whole concept of needing to be consciously transactional, we're going to have to separate 2 enmeshed concepts. Concept of loving a person, caring for them, seeing the positive in them, and seeing their value in general from the transactional element of relationship. In other words, you have to separate love from needs in a relationship. Just pause everything and think for a moment here about this concept. To love someone is to take them as part of yourself. It is to essentially include someone as you. Obviously, when you do this, this naturally gives rise to experiences like compassion, like empathy, like suddenly I want to caretake this individual's best interests. All of these feel-good things or appreciations can spring forth from this decision, this conscious choice to love. When we love someone, we can't actually act against their best interest without simultaneously acting against our own best interests. This means that we can't hurt someone else without hurting ourselves as well. However, we're still participating in this time-space reality of separation, and we need to take that into account, because it means that no matter how much you love someone, in this time-space reality, their wants and needs could be different from yours. And you've got to accept it. When you really love, you accept it. This means love doesn't simply take away your needs and wants, because all of a sudden, all that matters is the other person's wants and needs. You know? What this does is to put you in a position to not be able to play a zero-sum game anymore. If you do love someone, you care both about your own wants and needs as well as the other person's. You're looking for a win-win situation, a way to act in their best interest as well as yours. And that's equal, that's balanced. Loving someone implies that you want that individual to get their needs met. This means love recognizes the beauty of conscious transaction. It means conscious transaction is a key element to truly loving somebody. Another thing is that love should count for more than personal needs and wants. That's what we think, culturally. And in fact, we believe that anything less than that is selfish and narcissistic. We expect others to love and care about us enough to trump their own personal needs, wants, and best interests, or to want to need us no matter if we do not represent or offer what they need and want. Yeah, perhaps this is beginning to feel uncomfortable. This belief that love should count for more than personal needs and wants is really just pointing to our extreme desire for unconditional love. When we're trying to get unconditional love, we're trying to negate and deny and stuff down the transactional element of relationship. We feel more secure in our relationships, and we also feel a greater self-esteem when a person will stay with us in the relationship no matter what, including no matter whether their personal needs and desires are met or not. But we don't understand what unconditional love is and what it isn't. In relationships, love is actually and must be separate from personal needs and wants, like the transactional element of a relationship that makes the relationship either positive or negative, pleasurable or miserable. In fact, in some relationships, love and personal needs and wants can't even seem to compete. In any relationship, we're looking at a scenario like either you're lucky enough to have both elements of a relationship, whether there is love and this transactional element of relationship, or it's just a transactional relationship. Meaning there's something this person is getting because they need it, but they really don't actually love or care for you. But did you notice in all relationship there's a transactional element within the relationship? When somebody really does love a person, but there's really no transaction taking place, the relationship will dissolve, no matter how much the love is there. It will be one of those I care about at a distance type of scenario. People mistake love and transaction because they mistake loving someone and valuing that individual to be the same. When most people say, I want to be loved, what they really mean is that they want someone to value them to the degree that they are wanted. Because of that, they experience both self-esteem and the security of closeness and connection, which is the opposite of shame and loneliness.
Not only does this mean that love is not actually what they want is to be valued. It means that they don't understand what value is about, which is a personal need. A person who does not perceive themselves to need or want something that they perceive in you will not value you, whether they see value in you or not. And what does this mean? Well, it means that your best bet at feeling valued in a relationship is to consciously find a relationship where you can meet some need a person has, or you align with some desires that they have, and vice versa. Keep in mind, this has to be a need you actually want to meet. After all I said about this, you can probably see even more deeply why it's so dangerous to enter into a relationship on an inauthentic foot. So much of the dating advice out there is about putting your best foot forward. Why are we even saying it that way? Like, disguise your whole personality, walk into that room being what other people want. Let's go chase that person by telling them what they want to hear and doing things they want, even though it's really a bait and switch. We're just doing it to land them. This type of dynamic completely destroys the transactional element in a relationship. You do not want to practice false advertising relative to the transactional element of relationship, because that relationship will end. Setting the ideas of loving you or caring about you, or seeing any value that may be in you aside because it is separate. There's a transaction element to every single relationship. A person is always in a relationship because they get some payoff or some need or desire met by being in that relationship. And if you can understand this, you can experience much greater relationship success by entering directly into conscious transaction in your relationship. You know exactly what the other person needs and wants by being in a specific relationship with you, and they know exactly what you need and want by being in a specific relationship with them. In this way, you have much greater control over the satisfaction level of your relationship. And when the satisfaction level dips, you won't be confused about why that's happening. You're no longer powerless, because in conscious transaction, you will be able to look at what the other person's need is, and you will choose or won't choose to meet one or several needs the person has. And if not, you can expect that person to want to end or change the relationship, or to be able to do so even if they don't necessarily want to at this moment in time. You will be able to identify if a relationship is one that contains both the element of this transactional aspect as well as the love aspects of a relationship or not. But here's the best thing of all. By really understanding this concept and by entering into these conscious transactions within relationships and seeing that there are actually two different elements of a relationship, you can stop taking it so personally. You become free of those chains. When people grow dissatisfied in a relationship, you can stop taking it so personally when they decide that they want the relationship to end or that they want to reconfigure it. It may not just be a comment on your value in general. It may not actually be a comment on how much they love you or care about you at all. It's the opposite. It may simply be a comment on the fact that they're not getting their needs met. So much of the time when a person decides to end a relationship or change it, it doesn't mean anything about your inherent value or about whether you're lovable or about whether the person loves you, cares about you, or sees the positive in you at all. It is simply about their own personal needs and desires not being met. As strange as this may sound, and I want you to really sit on this one this week, be consciously transactional in all of your relationships. Observe yourself. Find the right energy exchange. You're already doing this at a subconscious level every single day anyway. Become aware of what you need and want in general and in a specific relationship agreement. Clearly communicate that to the other person. Find agreement with them about it. Become aware of what the other person needs and wants in general, and specifically in the relationship arrangements with you. Decide whether or not you can choose to meet those needs and desires. Clearly communicate the answer to that question with them. Find the relationship configuration that is right and find a role for them in your life based on doing this. And here's the next part. You may not be able to know or to predict everything that will happen over the course of your lifetime. So, not expecting yourself to predict the future, it's still a good idea when you get into a relationship and when you set up this conscious transaction to take a look at any potential scenarios that might crop up that may prevent one or both of you from fulfilling your side of this transaction, and discuss with the other person what you will do should you end up in those situations. Love someone better and be loved better by consciously finding the right energy exchange in your relationships. Be consciously transactional and watch your relationships and therefore your life experience improve. Now is the time to step outside our boxes and just connect with like-minded people to share our insights and curiosity. If you want to know more or have comments about this episode, why not reach out and connect with me? If you found this useful, like this video, share it, and subscribe to the channel to help it grow into a community of awakened individuals, all living with the same goal in mind: freedom and personal sovereignty. So I thank you for listening to this episode, in spite of the delay with publishing this episode due to technical faults. My name is Roxana FIAMMA. I'm your spiritual guide, your hero's journey and transformation coach, and this was the Conscious Cruising Podcast.